This is July 24th, 2000. I'm at EC0491, the Buffalo-Idaho mine. This is one that's on a small tributary to Fall Creek. It's associated also with the New York mine and several other prospects that we have in the area. I'm at the mill level adit, and I'm going to call this adit 1. You can see this rock outcrop up here. It's kind of sloughed back to that. If I get over here, you can see that there's kind of mostly this is caved, but if I get back right up in here, you can see there's a small opening that does go down inside there. You can see a little bit of a pack rat nest right there. So it's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide by maybe a foot and a half high there, the opening into it. This little mound of material right here may be a slump block or something that's kind of come down in, but basically it's sloughed back here about 50 feet from where the waste dump starts. Everything's pretty well overgrown here, so it's a little hard to see, but I'll get out in front here. This whole kind of flat, open, more open area here is pretty much the waste dump. A lot of scrap metal lying around out here on the dump. And then, see, the dump extends out about 100 feet kind of to the southeast here, off in this direction. And then there's another finger that extends about 200 feet down pretty much to the south here. See a small seep of water coming out. The drainage has some water in it, but not very much. Actually, part of the water that's coming out of here makes up the creek. So what I'll probably do is just get a sample of this and possibly get a downstream sample. I don't think there's too much point in getting an upstream sample, since most of the stuff that's coming out here springs on the hillside, kind of all around here, helping to feed this little tributary. Then there's also a stamp mill, the remains of a stamp mill down here. So I'll go out and we'll take a look at that. I'm looking back toward adit 1, the mill level adit. I'm standing on this kind of narrow little finger of a waste dump. You can see it extends down over here, excuse me, a little ways, probably about 20 feet. And then I just come out into the open here, look down over the embankment. You can see the remains of this mill right there. You can see the stamps. Each one of those is a stamp, so it was a 4-stamp mill as reported. Almost totally collapsed. It's probably even in worse shape now than it was back in 91 when the Bureau of Mines was in here and did a report on this. Pretty much looks about as they have on their map. Found a couple of the adits that they show, the trenches they show, and I still have a few to locate. So in any case, we'll move along and see if we can find some of these other adits. And there is supposed to be a shaft off to the south here, so I'll go see if I can't find that. It was reported to be caved in 91. And we'll just go make sure it still is. I've come up the gully a little ways above the mill level adit. Kind of looking up there at the scarp, you see that's actually the road cut for road 649, just above here. Little swale down in through here. And then the MLA report from 91 showed an open adit at the end of a long trench, just up the gully from the mill level adit away is about 200-300 feet. This is that trench. It goes on down here just as it shows, but the opening is only about 8 feet long. This is it right down there. It just goes back in about 8 feet and stops. So even though it's open, it's really not anything of significant problem at all. Several prospect cuts coming up to this level. There's probably a little slough right here, a little pit. Probably was a little prospect trench too. There's some cabins, and then the shaft is around the nose of this ridge. So I'm going to go on around and see if I can find those and get some pictures of the cabin. This is one of the collapsed cabins at the Buffalo-Idaho mine. This is a pretty sizable structure. Looks like it was about maybe 18-20 feet wide, maybe 30 feet long or 40 feet long. Pretty sizable, probably 30 feet long. See, it's totally collapsed right now. And then there was, this is possibly either part of the roof of another structure, or I'm not sure why just the roof is over there. Maybe part of it, maybe they had a little covered building right there. And then there's also a small cabin over here, which from the front looks to be in pretty good condition, but get inside and you can see a lot of it has collapsed. Most of the roof is gone on the one side. Looks like the snow pretty well took care of it. The other side's still kind of holding up. There's also at least one more building. A map, the MLA report shows two more structures. I think if I just look on down the road here a little ways, you can see that there's another collapsed one there, and I believe there's one further down. So I'll go see if I can get some photos of those. This access road connects with 649 about an eighth of a mile up the road here. I've come a little southwest of the collapsed cabins. I think you can see the wall of one right in the center there. I'm maybe 200 feet, 150 feet south and a little west. There was another collapsed cabin up here. Really doesn't amount to too much. This is the cave shaft. You can see they had an old pipe, probably for ventilation. Some old boards collapsed into it. Appears to be totally caved. The dump is fairly small. You can see this little thicket of trees right here. Just if I back off just a little bit, you can see the timber's pretty well open right through here. So the waste dump is just this little mound of material. There probably isn't enough there for, maybe over 20 or 30 feet of shaft, I would guess. Possibly a little more, but anyway, it's totally caved and really isn't a problem of any kind. And also just due south of the cabins and right around the slope of the hill here, kind of where the trees start there, is a large open dozed area that the MLA reports was a placer operation, and there are some ditches around here where they must have collected water and run them in to do some high level plastering. Didn't see any gravel, so it might have just been overburden that they were plastering. That's pretty much all there is up on top here. There's another adit caved. Well, it looked caved. I'll see if it is or not. It may have a small opening down across from the mill level adit. And then I also want to check and see if there's any old jig tailings down there. I didn't really notice any, but there could easily be some. If there are, they're right in the creek and possibly were washed away already. Well, this is kind of the end of an old trail. Comes out to what the MLA report showed as a caved adit, and indeed there's this big scarp here on the slope. A tiny bit of water trickling out. I'm not even going to get a sample. It's less than a gallon a minute here. And then some old boards here you can see may have been planks going back in for their rails or something. So I'm going to go ahead and what we'll do is we'll call the real short adit up there adit 2, even though it's not much of an adit, it's kind of just a little prospect. We'll call this adit 3. And then there is at least one more down by the road where I came in, and we'll go get a few pictures of that. This doesn't really amount to too much right here. There are some other fairly good-sized cuts back into the hillside which look similar to this. I don't know if they were plastering some of this hillside a little bit, or whether they just put some prospect cuts back into the overburden or what. But there's several of these back along this little trail and up the slope between here and the placer cut up on top of the ridge. We'll go back and look at these other ones, and then that should pretty well finish it up once we get some video of those. Well, this is what I'm going to call adit 4. If I can stand up here. The MLA shows this is caved, but as you can see, there is actually an opening in here, and it does go back in there. So it's nearly caved. It's completely sloughed kind of down here in front. You can see this is one of the old timbers near the portal. And then again, there's a very, very minor seep. Too little to really sample here. Less than probably less than a quarter gallon a minute. Not a lot in the way of a waste dump here. Kind of this little rib that comes out here is all there is. So it's about probably 30 feet long, but only about 6 feet wide on top, and only about 5 feet thick. So not very extensive. This is probably a little prospect adit. This is just below the access road. Access road is right kind of center of the frame, goes across through there. And then there is one other adit. In fact, I believe, if I look over here, we can see the waste dump of it right at the base of that tree, that dark pod in the area. That's kind of the waste dump. The access road crosses the top of it, and then the adit goes in on the be the northeast side of the road, I guess. So that's pretty much all over here. I'll go get a shot of that adit over there, and then we'll hopefully that'll wrap this one up. Well, that's the old 4-stamp mill at the Buffalo-Idaho. I'm across the little gully here, kind of on the east side, northeast side. I just came from, I don't think we can really even hardly see it, just right down the center there, the little darker area in the middle. It's the waste dump for adit 4. This is adit 5. Again, there's water flowing out of it. Looks like about 2 gallons a minute or so. So I'll get a sample here. If I come on up here, again you can see this is open. Although it doesn't seem to go anywhere. So yeah, it just stops right here. That's the end of it. The water's just seeping out some standing water in there, but I don't believe it's caved. I think that's as far as it ever went. And judging from the waste dump, probably the material that's was taken out of this entryway here is probably all there ever was. So I'm not real sure. This is almost more of a spring than adit water. There are quite a number of seeps around here. So seeing as how there really isn't anything here, I don't see too much reason to take a sample of it. It's pretty easy access if anybody ever wants to come in and get a sample of this, but it really isn't been open working for very long, so we'll just disregard this for now. I do want to go down and see if there's any tailings down there, and if there are, I'll grab a sample of those. And then I'll probably also get a sample downstream in the creek, and that should pretty well cover everything here.